Welcome to Equip, Build, Mature. It's a coolish day here on Crete, but it's a beautiful day. I want to share a word of encouragement with you today, and as we started last week, we'll be noticing different ideas about following Jesus. Today, we're going to continue our thoughts from last week, following Jesus at a distance. What does it mean exactly to follow Jesus? We say that and we speak about that, but do we really understand what that means? Well, a follower is dedicated to Jesus' life and Jesus' example. His mission is their mission. His values are their values. His heart is their heart. A follower is desperate, hungry to be like Jesus. A follower is so devoted to Jesus' mission that they will follow him to their own cross. A follower finds their entire identity, purpose, and meaning in Jesus. Jesus is the center of their lives. They are all in, fully committed to Jesus. To follow Jesus means to be with him, to do what he does, to have his motives. We want to be with him to absorb his character, imitate him, think his thoughts, feel his compassion for people. Jesus should be the greatest influence in my life. If there is a person you feel you cannot live without, be careful. You've exalted that person to God's place, and that's idolatry. Jesus must be the greatest influence in our lives. Jesus must become the reality of my life. Mark chapter 3, verse 14 explains what it means to follow Jesus. This is how the text reads. He also appointed 12. He also named them apostles to be with him, to send them out to preach. So the priority, before they could represent Jesus as they were sent out, they were first to be with him, so he could equip them to go out and proclaim his truth about him. So as followers of Jesus, he intends for us to spiritually grow, spiritually serve, and spiritually reproduce. God expects us to affect all those that are in our sphere of influence. We are not to only be receivers of his truth. We must be spiritual amplifiers to go out and share God's truth, to help others come to know God, to help others recognize their sin, to help others recognize that we have broken our image-bearing responsibilities so that we can become followers of Jesus. Following Jesus is about allegiance to him. At our covenant immersion, we told him, Jesus, we will go where he wants us to go. We will do what he wants us to do. We will be what he wants us to be. We are to deliberately and willingly place our lives in his hands. Our primary and impacting allegiance is no longer to ourselves, our families, our friends, our nation. They cannot be our primary allegiances. There can only be one master, one controller in my life. If you follow him, that means he is the master. So what does it mean to follow Jesus at a distance? Well, first, it's obvious. It is not a good thing. But this is how it happens if you travel through unfamiliar territory. It is wise to follow near, close to the one who leads us. If too much distance is allowed between us and the one who knows the way, we're going to drift off course. We're going to be lost, we're going to be confused, and we're going to be very afraid. We have allowed distance in following Jesus if we no longer totally rely on him to direct our lives. Three things cause this distance. First is fear. Fear causes us to back off from Jesus. What seems best physically is the most dangerous thing for us spiritually. If we are more concerned about pleasing people than we are pleasing God, then we are going to deny God. Fear of people, fear of rejection, and fear of suffering destroys our faith in God. In Mark chapter 14, Peter allowed too much distance to form in his walk with Jesus. Jesus had just been arrested. Traumatic. Everyone scattered. It was late at night. And we were given insight into Peter's actions in chapter 14, verse 54. It says, Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. There he sat with the guards and warmed himself at the fire. So in his gospel, Mark made a point with the phrase, followed him at a distance. We either follow him or we do not. Peter's walk with Jesus was disrupted. Peter followed the right person at the wrong distance. Out of fear, Peter was in a spiritually dangerous place. And the next time we see Peter, he denied Jesus 3 times. Distance will always lead us to denial. Sin builds a barrier between us and God. If we allow sin to become a lifestyle, then distance develops between us and Jesus. In Luke chapter 15, a young man lived in the presence of his father, but he went to a distant place and he wasted his life. In chapter 15 of Luke, verse 17, it says, he came to his senses. What it's saying is, at that far distance, when he had hit rock bottom, he came to his senses. He began to realize his desperate situation. And he knew that that desperate situation had eliminated the distance. In his mind, the distance shortened, and he went back to his father's embrace. See, God is always ready to take us back, ready to begin leading us again when we come to our senses, when we finally realize what the distance is doing to us. Distractions. Being distracted by the things of the world can put distance between us and Jesus. Too many meetings, too many events, too many activities. So, how is your walk with Jesus? Do you follow him every day, all day long? In Matthew chapter 14, Peter followed Jesus and he walked out onto the water. And it says, but in verse 30 of Matthew 14, but when he, Peter, saw the wind, he was afraid. He began to sink, but he cried out, Lord, save me. So Jesus took hold of Peter and he rebuked him because his faith was weakened by his doubt. Do we ever become arrogant from what we think we are accomplishing in our own power and our own intelligence and our own ability? Do we ever take our eyes off of Jesus because we're focused on something we think is more important at the moment? See, distractions are always going to lead us to have doubts, and doubts will always lead us to putting distance between us and Jesus. If you and I do not deliberately and constantly practice God's truth, we lose our passion and we allow other sources to establish our priorities and other sources to establish our perspectives. We must deliberately cultivate our walk with Jesus so that we can maintain our passion for him and maintain our focus on him. If you follow Jesus at a distance, your soul is in danger. Jesus calls us to follow him to our own cross. We must be willing to endure temporary destruction that ends in spiritual victory. We must be willing to be faithful as we follow Jesus as our only Lord and our only Master. I want to encourage you today, get rid of any distance that you've allowed to come between you and Jesus. Hope you guys have a great Tuesday. Thanks for taking time to share a few moments with me. Let's continue to follow him not at a distance, but let's follow him as closely as we can. Take care.